Welcome, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Guardians Ad Litem, We Speak for the Children. I am your host, Nancy Sanders. We are pleased to have with us today. First, I will introduce Andrea McHugh. She is an attorney with the State Attorney's Office. She prosecutes crimes against children, including sexual crimes and homicides. Our next guest at the table is Svetlana Kaminsky. She is one of 2 staff members at the Children's Guardian Fund, who we are spotlighting today as an associate with the Guardian Ad Litem program. She is the office manager, and she will be telling you a little bit about what is going on in the Children's Guardian Fund. And then we have Dr. Harold Hal Headley. He is currently the president of the Children's Guardian Fund and about to finish not his last term, but about to finish a term. He has served as president of the organization a number of times, so he'll tell us about that in a few moments. So if I may, I'd like to begin with Svetlana. Okay, as the office manager, you pretty much know what's going on in the office. Could you tell us, please, a little bit about the history of the office, and then I'll have you also tell us about some of the things you're responsible for.
Certainly. Well, the Children's Guardian Fund was actually started in 1996, and the way it came about was some women discovered that children in foster care did not get anything on their birthdays, and they thought, well, that's just not right. So they got together and they raised some money and they made sure that each child in foster care got a birthday cake for their birthday. And then it sort of grew into, well, kids also need bicycles, and then they need prom, and they should be able to go to summer camp, and it just grew and grew, and so it is what it is today. And at the moment, we are working on our spring appeal, which is going to go out at the end of this month, which will be soliciting funds from people to support our summer camps program.
Okay, thank you. Hal, if you are the outgoing president, if you could tell me, please, some of the things that you've done during your several terms as president and what you're most proud of.
I think I'm most proud of the work of our board and our 2 staff members only, and that would be Jan and Svetlana. With that small board, we're raising well over $200,000. And the other thing that I'm most proud of is we pride ourselves in being the group that says yes. A lot of times when the question comes to us, the kids and families have been turned down, and things like needing an airline ticket for a child to go to the funeral of his dear grandmother, who was his closest and maybe only really supportive family member. So I'm really proud of the just say yes attitude of our dedicated board and our overworked but wonderful 2-member staff.
Okay, thank you. Andrea, you're going to be the next president. You're currently the vice president. I know you've worked closely with Hal and with the staff. What are some of the things that you would like to do when you become president soon?
Well, I would like to see the fund continue to grow in the same way that Hal has been able to increase it, because the numbers of children who need our services is growing and increasing, and I want to make sure that we're able to keep up with that need and continue to give children in foster care the opportunity to do normal things like visit a family member's or go to a family member's funeral or have a bicycle or be involved in the programs.
Okay. What are some of the things that you have seen change over the years with regard to the children? And I'll throw this out to all 3 of you. Have there been changes with the children?
Wow, that's a tough one. I think what I saw as a big change, both when I was at the Child Protection Center and now with Children's Guardian Fund and when I was with Guardian Ad Litem, is I think case intensity has really gotten tougher. I think the cases have never been easy. They've always been difficult. I hate to call them cases, the children and what they've been through. But it seems like they're going through even more difficult times, which is hard to imagine. So that's the one thing that really kind of haunts me a little bit, that I think the challenges for families, it's so tough to be, a functional family any longer, but it's also tough to be a kid nowadays. I think it's tougher than ever.
Have any of the rest of you seen any changes during your tenure?
I think that we're seeing such a rise of drug usage in our community right now. There's a really a heroin epidemic that one of our board members, Major Connie Shingeldecker of the Manatee County Sheriff's Office, spoke about at our last luncheon. And that's really impacted the children of our community, the heroin usage of their parents. And we are finding more and more children are being removed due to neglect and abuse, and that number is growing. So I would say that's a significant change.
Okay. Svetlana, how have your responsibilities changed?
There has been an increase in need, and so just having to be there in order to respond to the needs, and being on top of the fundraising, being on top of answering questions that we get from the guardians, and just having that flexibility to respond to the variety of the needs that come in.
Okay. Hal, I know you've been on the board for a number of years. Tell me a little bit about your directors. Who are they?
Well, the great thing about our directors is they come from a variety of backgrounds. One of our members, for instance, Jeremy, is with the International Baccalaureate Program, so oftentimes he'll tell us, gee, I can't be here today, I'm going to be in Kuala Lumpur tomorrow, which I think is a little further away than Arcadia. And so we have members like that. We have members like Tom, who's an attorney. In fact, we have about 5 attorneys on our board right now, and they're all very busy people. Wendy's another example. Wendy Cox carves out time. One of the things we know about our board, we want people that are very, very busy and just barely have enough time for one more thing, and they're the ones that do the most wonderful work. So it's an exciting board. I get a lot of support from past presidents. Jasmine Clandish is one of them. She's wonderful, and she's another never say no person. Mm-hmm. So we really got it. My job, I think, sometimes just to be a cheerleader for these guys and get out of the way, because the men and women of our board, you can't go into a board meeting and say, here's something I'd like to propose, but I don't think we can do it, because they don't think that way. Mm-hmm. They don't act that way.
It's kind of like the old adage, if you want to get something done, always ask a busy person. Mm-hmm. And from what I've seen when I reviewed the list of names on the board of directors and the advisors, it seems like these are names that are very familiar in the community. These are people that actually get things done, as you pointed out. Andrea, why did you get involved with the Children's Guardian Fund?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, I have spent a significant portion of my legal career prosecuting crimes against children. And that's where a lot of it starts for children to be into foster care. Because to get into foster care, a child is the victim of either abuse, neglect, or abandonment. And so I found myself interacting with these children for a year or more as I was building my criminal case and prosecuting the criminal case. And I was just really struck by the fact that these children have to deal with so much. Not only are they the victims of crimes or neglect or abandonment, but then they're put into this new environment in foster care, and I just wanted to do something to help. And I was also really struck by the power of the guardian ad litem themselves. And for those who don't know, a guardian ad litem is a volunteer person who is assigned to that child, who's really the voice for the child. And I noticed over time in working with the children as they were transitioning, maybe from one foster care home to another, or maybe a facility or a group home to another, the one constant in the child's life was the guardian ad litem, the one person that could communicate to me, this is where this child is right now, this is what this child needs right now, this is the best way to approach the child right now. They were really my lifeline in communication with the child. And I think that that's part of the magic of the Children's Guardian Fund, is that guardian ad litem, that person who's assigned to look out for that child's individual needs at that time, is the person who requests from us whatever it is that unique need might be for that child at that point. And I just thought that was a brilliant way to help children in foster care. And after working with them for a number of years, I really wanted to do that.
How long have you been on the bench?
Oh, well, I'm a prosecutor, so
I'm sorry.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you for the promotion.
Okay, I just promoted you there.
Yeah.
Well,
In
there
front
are
of
some,
the
as they
bench,
approach 70,
So,
there might be job openings there for you. So
I've been a
thank you.
prosecutor for 11 years. I've been with the state attorney's office since 2004. I took a brief hiatus to work in civil practice and came back. And I have found prosecuting crimes against children to be some of the most satisfying work that I've ever done. And really working with children, they are so resilient, and as you know, being a guardian, you see the real good in humanity when you see what these kids are able to overcome.
Now, in the state attorney's office, do you get to select the cases that you work on, or are these generally assigned?
They're generally assigned, but in dealing with crimes against children, it is a specialty position within our office, and usually the attorney has to want to be there to do it. We receive a lot of special training, and we also get more resources to effectuate the prosecution than the average prosecutor. We have more time to work on the cases. We have more training. We have, we are able to give those cases more care and more time because my boss, Ed Brodsky, believes that those cases deserve the very best.
Okay, so do you have fewer cases?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, so that helps.
Yes.
With the time commitment.
Exactly.
Okay, Hal, go ahead, Hal.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things that I've observed over the years about the state attorneys, the detectives that do crimes against children, and the guardians ad litem who are willing to take those really, really tough cases, you can't really train them. They're born, they're not made. And like Andrew was talking about, coming back to it. I think people that we really get involved in this, and once you do and you see the injustices that these kids are going through, you really want to be there, pulling for them and working for them. But back to those guardians ad litem, I think they're a phenomenal link here, because they're the ones, like Judge Duran Adams, who's since retired, used to say, they're the eyes and ears of the court. They bring to the judge and to the prosecutors and everyone, the detectives, what they've seen and heard. And oftentimes they're the one person that can really take the time to sit down and spend a lot of time with the kids, because in defense of our state attorneys, they do have more than one case at a time.
I know, I'm glad you mentioned the involvement. One of the things that I saw when I went through your bio in preparation for our show this morning was that you've been involved with children from education. You were a teacher, a principal, a coach, all these different areas, and you have taught as an adjunct professor at Manatee, the previous Manatee Community College. Why do you think you were drawn to working with children?
Well, one thing that happened to me after I had first been a teacher and principal, and I look back at some of the children who didn't respond to teaching and didn't respond to things like they would go to the PE class and they refused to dress out for PE. And I never asked the right questions in those days. I didn't have the training. So after I learned more about child abuse and its impact on children and families, then I really wanted to go back and sort of spread the word to some of my fellow educators and other professionals. And that was part of my rationale for getting into this. And then the rest of it, like I said, once you get there and you see what's needed, then you can't go half speed.
I saw part of your background too is that you were involved with sociology, and I'm very familiar, having taught sociology at one point myself as well. How do you think the sociologist can look at these cases differently?
Well, I think a lot of them have a hard time doing that, quite frankly, if you haven't studied also abnormal psychology and other things. And if you've, by chance, not been through any difficulties as a child and as a family, which is very rare, then you really have a hard time understanding this. So, I found that like any other profession, some of the sociologists really get it. And more now, when young people are in college learning the social work skills that I learned back many years ago, because I was a juvenile probation officer in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, and we didn't really have the training on child abuse that they get now. So I'm really encouraged about that part. And you're right, the sociologists they've had to rethink what a family unit is and how it works and how it doesn't work.
And how children really learn by what they see and what they experience. Svetlana, that gets me to my next question for you. You mentioned in your bio that you were inspired to become part of the Children's Guardian Fund because of the experiences you had as a child when your family immigrated to the United States. Can you give me a little background on your family background and how you ended up in the Sarasota area?
Sure. My family moved to the United States in 1994. I was 8 years old, and I just remember the first year we moved here, we didn't have very much because we just arrived. We had like 6 suitcases and that was it. And we got home and it was Christmas time and there were just all these presents in our house and we didn't know where they came from or how they got there, but they were just all there, and it was just so amazing to have that, to just think, wow, we're in this new land and somebody cares enough to do that. And so just being able to sort of raise funds and be able to do that for kids who are in a way sort of plucked out of their home and transplanted into something that, they're just in a new home, and all of a sudden they have a comforter or a toy or a teddy bear, something that just makes them feel a little bit more comfortable, and something that helps them realize that other people care what they're going through.
Okay. And so when you came to Sarasota area, then did you just find the position? Did you search it out, or did you find it in the newspaper, or how did you actually become involved with the organization?
Well, I studied communications in college, and when I lived in Seattle area, I worked with social services, immigrant refugee families. And when I moved here, I was looking for similar positions, and I applied for this one. Just found it on Craigslist, and when I got a response, it sounded kind of odd.
Okay.
Like the person said, well, there's only one person in the office, and we don't really have our own office, we're just with United Way. And I thought, this is just odd, I bet it's a scam. But I'm so glad that I took the time to respond and to engage and actually find out what it was, because it's been just the most amazing job I've had. It's been so rewarding.
Okay, and you work with one other person in the office, that's Jan Vestal?
Yes.
What do you do with Jan? How do you all work together? What are your responsibilities with each other?
Well, my responsibilities are primarily on the fundraising side, so I seek out grant money and I seek out sort of connections, and then Jan is responsible for spending the money.
Okay.
So she gets to do the fun job of reviewing the requests and saying yes to the kids, and then she tells me all about, well, this is what we did with this grant money, or this is how we spent it, and she shares the stories that sort of inspire and fuel my work. So that's kind of where we work together. And then we'll go out into communities and talk about what we're doing as well together. But our main thing is Jan sharing the amazing stories, and then me sharing those stories with our donors and people who are
I know
supporting.
because of confidentiality, we're not allowed to go into any specifics, but can you tell us generally about some of the things that have impressed you that the money has been spent for? I know you mentioned a lot of general things like birthdays, and I know they just increased the birthday money for each birthday now to
Right.
$35
Yes.
per child, which is great. So what are some of the ones that really touched your heart?
There was a child who was in kindergarten, and she was failing school. And we got through the guardian, who sort of reached out and said, is there anything that we can do to help this child? We got the child connected with some tutoring in 6 sessions, which was under $300, got her from failing to passing. So just realizing that a child who would have sort of at the beginning of their education career, in kindergarten failed, that's just huge for me that she got to go on and have that confidence instead of feeling crushed. So stuff like that. Sometimes Jan shares pictures of girls all dressed up for their prom, ready to go, and just realizing that they get to be part of something that all the other kids in school are doing. That's just so important. Participation in competitions. There was a young man who was very talented, and we actually made it possible for him to go and compete in a technology conference, and he placed second place. So that was just amazing that we could make that happen for him. And a lot of stories. I can sort of go on all day, but I don't want to take up the whole time.
We'd love to hear some. Think of one more. One more. Okay.
Okay. Well, let me
Okay.
think about that.
Okay, Hal, what about you? And then Andrea, I'm coming to you about some special activities.
I think what excites me the most is, in general, these children who may be living in Nocatee or Palmetto or Osprey, Florida, 30 years from now, when they can say, gee, back there when Dad went to jail and Mom had a drug problem and my aunt and uncle were not able to take care of us, somebody cared enough to speak up for us, to come to school, to make sure that we caught some breaks there. They helped me get cleats so I could play Little League football, and later on, I became a college football star or whatever. And then there was this lady, I think her name was Nancy, and she used to go to court and say, but Judge, I want to make sure the right thing happens for this kid. So there was something going on. Now that was 30 years ago, so it's really hard for me to remember all the details, but somebody cared, like your wonderful story of items under the tree. Somebody cared enough to make sure that we got what we needed back at a time when really our family had fallen apart. And They gave us some hope. They gave us some opportunity. And I think that's just in general what excites me about this program. And I've actually met a few people that many years ago had that kind of experience and are able to tell us now what happened and how exciting it was.
Okay. Andrea, what about you? What sorts of things have you seen with the families?
Since Svetlana shared some stories about the younger children, one of the things that I think is really neat and what has been striking to me are the older children, the children that are in the position of having to transition into adulthood, and they need things like to get a driver's license or to find out how they're going to support themselves now that they're out of foster care. So watching our program assist with that has been really meaningful. There's one young adult, I guess, that I can remember that was in foster care that we paid for the person to have the beauty school supplies they needed to go to vocational school to then be able to support herself. And that sort of independence, that's exactly what we want. We want to enable a child to become an independent adult, and without providing for that intermediate, those intermediate materials, who knows if she would have been able to do that. So I think the gift of independence for, I don't know, you know what I'm talking about, is probably $500 or less. Yeah. To me, that was just such an important gift to give her the ability to support herself and to go into a profession as an adult.
Yeah.
Hal, you were going to say something?
I guess just ditto and ditto, and it is really exciting to think about some of the older kids. We've had some phenomenal speakers, Senator Nancy Dietert, Major Connie Shingle-Decker, but probably the most amazing speaker was one of the young men. And when he finished, I did say to him, now when you run for governor, can I be on your committee? Because that's exciting to think of a child who really, young man who lost his family of origin and was so well assisted by a lot of people, including a guardian ad litem, and was able to stand up in front of 350 people and tell an exciting story about his life, his future, and how his siblings had helped him, and everybody had helped him. And that's just really, really exciting.
I know at the your major fundraiser in the fall, is that the young man that you were speaking about?
Yes.
I agree, he was phenomenal. Everybody in that room, and there were hundreds of people in the room, I believe, were so impressed with him and the things that he shared and how inspirational he was, encouraging people to get involved. You do that every fall. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, and that's our big fundraiser. We made a decision a while ago, partly because, like you said about our board, they're very busy people. We don't do barbecues. We no longer have a golf tournament. We found that really wasn't as lucrative as the amount of work we put into it. And we have a 2-person staff, and they really want to work for the kids. And so if we can raise the funds through our appeal and our luncheon, that's it. That's all. We don't go back to the community 10 times a year and send them envelopes. We do it a couple times a year, and people have really begun to realize that, I will brag, we're a very efficient not-for-profit with only 2 employees who I would tell you aren't as well paid as they should be, and we keep expenses down. Our board members don't go to any fancy meetings, or if they do, they pay their own way. So those are all things that we feel strongly about. And every event that we do have, the few that we have, we cut every corner we can. Svetlana and Jan are so good at working out
pinching
deals.
their pennies.
Yes, pinching their pennies. So that's an exciting part of the Children's Guardian Fund.
And I have to chime in and say that I am also just extremely proud of that part, that donors know when they donate to the Children's Guardian Fund, their money is going to go to a child and what that specific child needs through the guardian ad litem request. And I just think that I know as a donor, when I donate my money, that's what I want to happen. And I'm just extremely proud of that as well.
Okay.
And if anyone's interested in attending this year, it's going to be on Monday, November 14th. So save the date.
I have it on my calendar. I will be there. I know you mentioned Senator Nancy Dietert. She's done a lot of things, and she spoke at the most recent Guardian Ad Litem Appreciation Luncheon. And she was talking about some of the common sense things that really no one had ever thought about until she had a young woman come to her office in Tallahassee and say, I can't get a driver's license, I can't do this, I can't go to things out of county. It's very difficult for me. And I know Nancy made a number of changes there. What are some of those changes?
Well, she gave that wonderful example of the high school football kicker that his team made the playoffs and they were in the state finals and he got to kick the winning field goal, but he couldn't travel out of county without a judge's special order, which we were able to get at the last minute. And now it's been simplified. And as Andrea indicated, we also know that particularly the older kids, giving them that sense of independence, which is one of the things that Nancy's really worked for, because a driver's license and not having to go live with someone who's there supposedly to help you, who might be there to further exploit you, those are things we're trying to prevent with the older kids, and that's exciting that we can do that.
I know we're just about out of time, so I'd like to give you each a little bit of a challenge in your closing statement. In addition to your closing statement, which I ask you to prepare, if you would also think back to someone in your life, an individual, that made a difference in your life that you still remember, and this could be kind of an example of what the children we're working with might be able to look back upon. So can you think of something? Svetlana, let's start with you.
Sure. Well, when I was growing up, I did not like recess. I was sort of this odd kid who didn't like recess. And there was this librarian. I was in 2nd grade, and she actually allowed me to volunteer at the library. So I would go, and she taught me how to put the books back. And then every time there was sort of a holiday, she would give us a little prize. Me and my friend went there. And I still remember her. It was sort of my segue into volunteering. I've loved volunteering ever since because she made it feel so special that actually being part of something meant so much to me. And I remember her because she was so kind, and she gave me an opportunity to volunteer and learn all about that.
Okay, Andrea?
I can think of an English teacher that I had a very close relationship with, and she was in middle school, and then she was married to an English teacher that I had in high school. But that couple always took special interest, I felt like, in me and supported anything extracurricular that I did in terms of volunteering or being involved in the community. And I think that that special interest or that special attention really encouraged me to continue to do the good things that I was doing. And so when we talk about the Children's Guardian Fund paying for things like attending camp, I'm hopeful that the children will have a special connection maybe with an adult there that will have the same sort of mentor relationship.
And I noticed in your bio you do have a degree in English prior to law school, so that may possibly have had an impact. Hal, what about you?
Well, I had a 5th grade teacher, and I didn't even understand this at the time. She kept talking about Pearl Harbor and having survived that morning. I can't imagine what that was like Sunday morning to go through that. She was the only person who ever, I guess, saw this part in me and said, "You're going to be in a 1-act play." And no one else had seen that. And I guess it really did bring out some good things in me. Then I have one more. My son with Down syndrome, Tim, and I'll tell you why. When he was born, the doctor came out and said, "Your son's going to have a low muscle tone." In 2014 in Orlando, Florida, he won the World Powerlifting Championship. And this past winter in Atlanta, Georgia, he full squatted 303 pounds. So he's now beating his former state champ dad badly in weightlifting. And that just shows, I think, what people that and he reminds me I'm the one that's disabled, but people that supposedly have disabilities usually have special abilities. And that's what we found out about a lot of these children in care. In fact, all of them have special abilities.
Okay, in our closing moments, could you just each say something to the audience about why they should become involved with the Children's Guardian Fund or why they should donate to the Children's Guardian Fund?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I would say that children that are in foster care didn't choose to be there. They are dealing with choices that were made by other people. And we have an opportunity to intervene in that child's life at a time that we can change the way they view the world. And I think that there's nothing more important, and no person is more deserving than a child who's been abused or abandoned and neglected. And I think that that's the reason, if you have any resources, those are the people of our community that we want to support.
Thank you. Svetlana?
And if you're looking to get involved, but maybe you don't have that full-time commitment to become a child advocate yet, this is just a great way of making a difference in a child's life, because the funds you donate really are going towards important things like tutoring or helping them get work boots so they can become independent, and things that are really helping them on their way to becoming producing adults in our community who are healthy and are not going to abuse their own children.
Okay, and Hal?
And I'm taking this from our elevator speech that our board put
Okay.
together, just part of it. I know it's difficult to read, but I think I can do this. We provide for emergency needs such as cribs, clothing, and other essentials, and support more than 1,000 children in our community. CGF also provides funding to help them reestablish normal childhood experiences such as playing sports, attending summer camps, tutoring, and driving lessons. And this is called normalcy, and this is what these kids need and deserve. And the Children's Guardian Fund is dedicated to that. So jump aboard, join us, become a Guardian Ad Litem, give us a call. We're ready to help.
Again, we want to thank you, the viewers, for watching this edition of Guardian Ad Litem, We Speak for the Children. Our panelists, Hal Headley, Andrea McHugh, and Svetlana Kaminsky. We also want to thank you for being here, in addition to METV for providing the Guardian Ad Litem and the Children's Guardian Fund with a platform from which we can share our program and the organizations that work with us for the benefit of the children in our community. Our next edition will be hosted by our Circuit Director, Tony Latorte, and she will be with us sometime next month. Thank you very much for joining us. Bye.